very good afternoon to all. So, Professor Anuradha Jain back with the topic on unemployment, which is very important topic to understand. It's a socio-economic problem that is prevalent in Indian economy also. So, today we are going to discuss what is unemployment, what are the different types of unemployment, and how to control unemployment. So, how do we define unemployment? Unemployment is defined as a situation when in a country there are large number of able-bodied person of working age who are not able to get work, but they are able to work and they have all the skills to work and also are willing to work. So people who are either unfit or work for physical or mental reasons or don't want to work, that is like for example sadhus, are excluded from the category of unemployment. Now mere engagement in some productive occupation does not necessarily mean absence of unemployment. People who are only partially employed or are engaged in inferior jobs which are not up to their level or which are not up to their skill, education, etc., though they can do better job, are not adequately employed. They are known as underemployed and they are not counted under the category of employment. Now it is called a state of underemployment which is equally bad for the prosperity of a country. Under capitalism, it seems some amount of unemployment is inevitable. The best that can be done is to keep the number of unemployed as low as possible. Unemployment is the inability of labor force participants to find jobs. If a person is not employed and is actively seeking work, they are counted as unemployment. And people not engaging in or actively seeking work are not part of the labor force. Now, if we talk about the types of unemployment, then broadly there are three main types of unemployment. First is frictional unemployment, then structural unemployment, and the last one is the cyclical unemployment. And to understand the concept of full employment and proper the term of employment, unemployment, the difference between these types of unemployment needs to be understood. Now first, if we talk about frictional unemployment. Now what is frictional unemployment? Frictional unemployment exists when people are temporarily out of work because of the lack of perfect mobility on the part of labor, or in a growing and dynamic economy in which some industries are declining and others are rising, and in which people are free to work wherever they wish, some volume of frictional unemployment is bound to exist. Now this is so because it takes time for the unemployed labor to learn new trades or to shift to new places. Now where there is deemed for labor, now thus frictional unemployment exists when there is unsatisfied demand for labor, but the unemployed workers are either not fit for the job in question or are not in the right place to meet this demand. Now workers have different skills, interests, abilities and jobs are different, and skill requirements, working conditions and pay levels. Now as a result, a new worker entering the labor force or a worker who has lost a job probably will not find an acceptable job right away. Now most workers spend at least some time in job search, just as like most firms spend time searching for a new person to fit in the job. Frictional unemployment is short-term unemployment that arises from the process of matching workers with jobs. Some frictional unemployment is unavoidable. As we have seen, the US economy creates and destroys millions of jobs each year. The process of job search takes time. So there will always be some workers who are frictionally unemployed because they are between jobs and in the process of searching for new jobs. Some frictional unemployment is due to seasonal factors such as weather or fluctuations in demand for some products or services during different times of the year. Now, for example, like stores located in beach resorts areas reduce their hiring during the winters, and ski resorts reduces their hiring during the summer. Now, department stores increases their hiring in November and December and reduce their hiring after New Year's celebration. And in agriculture areas, if you see, employment increases during the harvest season and declines thereafter. Now, construction workers in many parts of the United States experienced greater unemployment during the winter than during the summer. So, seasonal unemployment refers to the unemployment due to factors such as weather, variations in tourism, and other calendar related events. Now, because seasonal unemployments can make the unemployment rate seem artificially high during some months and artificially low during other months, the BLS reports two unemployment rates each month, one that is seasonally adjusted and one that is not seasonally adjusted. The seasonally adjusted data eliminate the effects of seasonal unemployment. Economists and policymakers rely on the seasonally adjusted data as more accurate measure of the current state of the labor market. Now, the question is like, would eliminating all frictional unemployment be good for the economy? No, because some frictional unemployment actually increases economic efficiency. Frictional unemployment occurs because workers and firms take the time necessary to ensure a good match between attributes of workers and the characteristics of jobs. So, by devoting time to job search, workers end up with jobs they find satisfying and in which they can be productive. Now, of course, having more productive and better satisfied workers is also in the best interest of the firms and also in the best interest of the development of the country. Now, the another type of unemployment is structural unemployment. In the modern world, man by himself hardly produces anything. Now, even the primitive man needed some elementary tools like the bow and the arrow to engage in hunting for the earning of his livelihood. Now, with the growth of technology and specialization, he needs much more capital with which to engage in the productive activity. So, all these instruments of production constitute community's stock of capital. Now, if the workforce grows faster than the stock of capital of a country, the entire addition of the labor force cannot be absorbed in productive employment because not enough two instruments of production are there to employ them. Now, the resulting unemployment is known as the structural or long-term or Marxian unemployment. Now, computer generated 3 dimensions, animations, which was used in movies such as Monsters University and Despicable Me 2, has become much more popular than traditional hand-drawn 2-dimensional animation. And all of you know that we are always keen to see 3D movies than the 2D movies. And now, there are 4Ds and 5D movies also. Now, as a result, many people who are highly skilled in hand-drawn animation have lost their jobs at Walt Disney Pictures, DreamWorks, and other movie studios. Now, to become employed again, many of these people either became skilled in computer-generated animation or found new occupation. Now, in the meantime, they were unemployed. Economists consider this animator structurally unemployed because there was structural change in the system that people moved from watching 2D movies to the 3D movies and 4D movies. So, structural unemployment arises from a persistent mismatch between the job skills or attributes of workers and the requirement of the jobs in the economy. Now, while frictional unemployment is short term, structural unemployment can last for longer period because workers need time to learn new skills. Now, for example, employment by US steel firms fell by more than half between the early 80s and the early 2000s as a result of competition from foreign producers and technological change that substituted machine for workers. So many steel workers found new jobs in other industries only after lengthy periods of retraining themselves. Some workers lack even basic skills such as literacy or have addictions to alcohol or other drugs that make it difficult for them to perform adequately the duties of almost any job. So these workers may remain structurally unemployed for years. The another type of unemployment is cyclical unemployment. Now the cyclical unemployment is due to deficiency of aggregate effective demand. Now this is so called cyclical unemployment. Now it is so because business cycles occur at more or less regular intervals. During times of depression, business activity is at a low ebb and unemployment increases. Some people are thrown out of employment altogether and others are also partially employed. So advanced capitalist countries have seen suffering from time to time from this type of unemployment which occurs due to the business cycles, ups and downs in the business, like sometimes there is boom in the economy, sometimes there is recession, depression or recovery phases. So this type of unemployment arises not because of too little capital as in the case of structural unemployment, but because of too much capital for a short while in relation to demand for goods and services. Now in other words, this type of unemployment is due to the fact that the total effective demand of a community is not sufficient to absorb the entire production of goods that can be produced with the available capital of stocks. Now in a free private enterprise economy, production takes place in response to the profit motive. So when businessmen cannot sell their entire output, their profit expectations are not fulfilled, so that their reaction in the next period is to reduce their output. And when they reduces their output, their investment goes down, their employment goes down, and therefore the rate of unemployment increases and the cyclical unemployment is created in the economy. And now factors of production earn their incomes because of their participation in the process of production, and when entrepreneurs decide to reduce their production, some factors of production become unemployed. Now since employment is the major source of income for a great majority of people, a fall in employment signifies a fall in their income also. And if income goes down, then again demand goes down and that cycle may continue. Now when the economy moves into recession, many times find their sales falling and cut out on their production. As production falls, firms starts laying off workers. Workers who lose their jobs because of the recession are experiencing cyclical unemployment. And all of us know the example of the world recession of 2007-8. All of us have experienced. In Indian economy, the impact was not much, but in many parts of the world have seen that recession of 2007 to 2009. And example is like Ford company laid off workers during this recession of 2007 to 2009. Now as the economy slowly recovered from the recession, Ford began rehiring those workers. Now the Ford workers who had been laid off from their jobs during the recession and then rehired during the following expansion had experienced cyclical unemployment. So when aggregated demand falls short of aggregate supply, other at full employment level of resources, a deflationary or recessionary gap emerges in the economy. Now, this gap or demand deficiency arises due to the fact that investment demand is not large enough to be equal to the amount of saving at full employment level of income. So, investment demand depends upon expected rate of profit. When businessmen have adverse expectation about future profit, the expected rate of return of capital falls, causing decline in investment demand. And the decline in investment demand leads to a multiple fall in overall aggregate demand, resulting in unemployment of resources, especially unemployment of labor. And this is recession. If it is very severe, it is called then depression, because as we discussed under business cycle also, that when profit goes down, then the situation is recession. But if the businessman started incurring loss, that means the worse situation than recession, then it becomes depression. Now, to pull the economy out of recession or depression, the adoption of measures to raise aggregate demand are as follows. Like first can be deficit financing or deficit budgeting. Now, expanding aggregate demand, because if you want to come out from the recession, and if any economy wants to increase the employment and they want to save the economy from the problem of unemployment, then expanding aggregate demand helps. And the one way of doing this is deficit budgeting. An important fiscal measure to correct demand deficiency is to plan for deficit budget. Deficit budgets can be attained in two ways. First, government should increase its expenditure on goods and services without being matched by imposition of fresh taxes or without raising the rates of old tax. So that means that their expenditure should be more than their revenue. In 1930s, when all capitalist economies of the world suffered from severe depression, Keynes recommended the increase in government expenditure on public goods and public works programs such as construction of roads, railways, canals, school building, irrigation works, electrification of villages, etc., to tackle the problem of demand deficiency. Now, it should be noted that increase in public expenditure will have a multiplier effect on raising income and employment. That is, income and employment will not rise to the extent of increase in government expenditure, but by much more than that, depending upon the magnitude of multiplier. The magnitude of multiplier, which is generally denoted by the letter K, in turn depends upon marginal propensity to consume, and therefore K is equal to 1 minus MPC. 1 minus MPC, the marginal propensity to consume. The higher the multiplier, and therefore the greater the effect of public expenditure on income employment. Because if multiplier is high and income will increase at more multiple, and therefore that will lead to increase in the demand in the economy. Because in 1930s, what was the situation of Great Depression? That there were goods in the market, but there was no demand. And therefore, Keynes came out with the introduction of or with the importance of macroeconomics and the interference of the government to correct the situation of imbalance. And then at that time he suggested that the government should increase their expenditure to increase the demand. Now, if government increases its expenditure, suppose for example by 5,000 crores and the multiplier is 3, the national income and output will expand by 15,000 crore, corresponding to this expansion in national output, and there will be threefold increase in employment of labor given the labor output ratio. Now, it is important to note that the maximum effect on income and employment, deficit budget should be financed by borrowing from the general public, but by creating new money. That means by issuing new notes by Reserve Bank of India. Thus, deficit budget should be financed by what is called monetization of fiscal deficit, which would lead to the expansion in money supply in the economy. Similarly, demand can be increased by reduction in the taxation, which will lead to increase in the disposable income. And if disposable income increases, then also the demand for the products in the market increases. Then other way can be monetary policy. There are various instruments of monetary policy like cash reserve ratio, SLR, statutory liquidity ratio, bank rate, open market operation, and all through which the money supply can be increased in the economy, and because of which demand can be raised. And if demand increases, then obviously the profit margin of the people will increase, and investment will increase, and employment will increase. Similarly, export promotion can be the instruments to increase aggregate demand. If we promote exports, exports will increase, and total demand for goods in the economy will increase, and that is also one way to increase the demand and to increase the employment. And to sum up, like, what are the main reasons for unemployment in the economy? The main reasons can be like population growth, changing technology, demand for highly skilled labor, global competition, illiteracy, and if they are not skilled, then also that leads to increase in the unemployment in the economy. So unemployment is a very, very crucial problem for any economy, and our government is taking various steps to reduce unemployment. There are various government schemes also to reduce the unemployment. And the basic solution to the problem of this sort is faster the rate of capital formation so as to enlarge employment opportunities. And for this purpose, every possible encouragement should be given to savings and their productive utilization in increasing the rate of investment. Because if investment increases, then only employment generation will take place. So that is all about like what is unemployment and different types of unemployment, and I hope you are clear with these basic concepts of unemployment. So thank you so much for patience listening. Thank you.